cold open question to kick us off for the Friday, April 26th edition of the Just Basketball Show. Wes Goldberg. Game one, all the home teams won last weekend. This week, we saw 3 road teams take game 2. We're not going to get to many of them today because there was a bunch more game 3s on Thursday. But which of those road W's was most impressive to you across the postseason?
Well, it's got to be the 8 seed beating the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, right? It's got to be the Miami Heat going into Boston and doing the things that Celtics fans were all scared was going to happen and get the split in Boston, sending Celtics fans home with a minute left in the game. They start leaving the arena there. It was impressive not only because they hit like a miraculous 50%, 52.5% from three-point range, but just the manner with which they came out and took it to a team that was so heavily favored in that series. Many people saying was going to sweep them. The Heat going into the series without Jimmy Butler, no Terry Rozier, so down 2 of their starters. And yes, they shot over 50% from three-point range. But Brendon, they completely morphed everything that they did all season long. This was not a team that takes and makes like 22, 23 three-pointers in a game. That has not been the Miami Heat, except they went into that game and cosplayed as the 2018 Houston Rockets for a night, and they were able to do it. They were able to actually pull it off. That to me has got to be the most impressive road win of the first round so far.
Absolute masterclass from Bam Adebayo. Defensively guarding everybody, offensively late in that fourth quarter, just pull up midi after pull up midi. And look, they morph into whatever they need to morph into, and they are monsters in the postseason. I cannot disagree with you. Although a tip of the hat to Pascal Siakam, who also was uncontainable in a very different situation out in Milwaukee. But I think we have to go with the Miami Heat. All right, lots of game 3s to get to on Thursday and some off-season look-ahead stuff as well coming up on the Just Basketball Show. Welcome into the Just Basketball Show for Friday, April 26th. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen. That over there is Wes Goldberg. This is your 3 times a week dose of all things hoops. Thank you for finding us wherever you listen to or watch your podcast. Hit follow or subscribe on whatever platform you find yourself on. Follow us on social media, X, Instagram, TikTok. Lots of content coming your way all postseason long. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by Thrive Fantasy, a player prop DFS platform where you can pick more or less on your favorite players across multiple sports, including the NBA and NFL. Sign up today with the code JustBasketball, and Thrive will match your first deposit up to $250. We're headed toward a competitive sweep, I think, in Denver, LA, Wes, as everybody liked to call it, coming off of last year, where a very similar series played out. The Lakers just do not have enough. It didn't even take the Nuggets until the fourth quarter this time to mount their comeback. It was late second quarter, third quarter just got uglier, and the fourth quarter, it just kind of held. The Lakers just don't have enough, and I think we really tricked ourselves into thinking this thing was going to be any different looking than it has been.
And it looked like it was going to be different to start this game, didn't it? They come out, land that haymaker, but, they throw the haymaker right out of the gate, and it just felt like that exhausted them. They just sort of ran out of gas. And for a team that was so desperately on the ropes, the third quarter and the fourth quarter did not look like a team that was playing with that level of urgency. But I want to give credit to the Nuggets where it's due, too, because I feel like so much of this conversation is around the Lakers and maybe this season ending for them and what does that mean for LeBron James and this offseason and all these things. But, man, the Nuggets put on a clinic in that third quarter. They end up outscoring the Lakers in the third period, 34-22. And I don't even know that the Lakers played bad defensively for most of the third quarter. They basically let go of the rope at the end of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter. But I just thought that Denver found whatever little pressure point was in the Lakers defense and exploited it. They just tugged at that string and unraveled the Lakers defense completely. This is not a toothless defense. This is not a defense that typically gets beat like that, but they do when they're playing Nikola Jokic and this Nuggets team. I think there's something to be said about the fact that they don't have an answer for a team that they've lost to 10 straight times now, but you got to give credit to the Nuggets for being able to kind of read the Lakers schemes. Okay, you're throwing Anthony Davis on Nikola Jokic. You're going to do that. All right, now you're doing the Rui Hachimura thing. Okay, now you want to switch LeBron onto him and have him front. Like, whatever it is that they're doing, the Nuggets are able to solve it, and I thought they just did a masterclass, an absolute clinic of that in that third quarter.
Yeah, Lakers start out 8-0. Denver has 2 turnovers early. And you mentioned that punch tired them out. I mean, it tired LeBron out, if we're being more specific, right?
Yep.
He doesn't have enough even to probably play a competitive 42 minutes. He didn't really impact the game much once it got out of hand. He didn't have anything to throw one final punch and have a run in him at all. Third quarter, Lakers called a timeout at 6:21. They had 8 points at that moment. So they scored 14 down the stretch, but it was really the defense, obviously, like you mentioned, that fell apart there. But I'm all good to jump into some Nuggets hype here, because that balance that you talked about, I mean, they adjusted to the fact that AD guarded Jokic from the jump here by just not needing Jokic to score. You know, he has 24 at the end, but for most of this game, he wasn't really at full throttle as a scorer, doesn't make a three, get some putbacks, 5 offensive rebounds, but this was not a grab him by the throat type of scoring game from Jokic like we've seen him do when his back is against the wall. What I couldn't help myself but thinking about, Wes, as we're kind of now, 5 rounds into this little mini dominant era for Denver, is they have all these guys step up depending on what the moment calls for. And I was looking at who those guys are between Gordon, Porter Jr., even KCP, obviously Murray and Jokic. You could even look at Brown or Watson. All of their players, and this is true of a lot of NBA guys, but especially on this team, they were all number 1 guys at various points in their life, right? Like Gordon comes from Orlando. KCP scored 18 a game in Detroit. Michael Porter Jr. is the number 1 dude in the world when he's 16, 17 years old. So I think that doesn't get talked about enough when we are so in awe. It's always Jokic set so-and-so up. But this Nuggets team has dudes who are more than comfortable to kind of own that moment if the defense shifts or if the kind of energy of the game needs them to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the funny thing about all of that is the glue that holds all of it together is a second-round pick selected during a burrito commercial, right? It's sort of the opposite of the other guy that you were talking about. So he's able, and everybody's say, okay, obviously this guy's the best player in the world. We are down lower on the pecking order than he is. But to your point, Brendon, when AD is going to come out and guard Jokic at the top, wherever he is, and come out with him, that opens up all those backdoor cuts. It opens up everything for all his teammates. And it was 29 points for Aaron Gordon. When was the last time Aaron Gordon scored 29 points? I don't know. But it was just easy points, spoon-feeding him, backdoor cut after backdoor cut. And like I said, it looked like the Lakers' defense was bad, but it was more just Jokic diagnosing and dicing him up than anything. Yeah. And it wasn't like there was a ton of holes. There was always just one hole, and Jokic always found it. You mentioned the help, too, that Jokic is getting, and I don't even know if it's help, but it's just kind of complementary pieces might be the more accurate way to put it. And the Lakers aren't getting that. LeBron had that first punch that we talked about. Anthony Davis had an awesome game tonight. 33 points, 15 rebounds. Like, he was great all in all. 61% shooting. You got a nice game from Austin Reeves, but they got 19 points from their bench. It's not enough. The good part about that is that was 17 more points than that bench had scored through the first 2 games of this series. It was a crazy stat that they had like 2 points off the bench for most of the series. So they're not getting enough help. There's not enough depth on this team. I know Darvin Ham keeps wanting to talk about injuries, but I don't care if you're missing Cam Reddish. I don't care if you're missing Jared Vanderbilt. Like, that's not real injuries.
Christian
that
Wood's
matter
not
in the
doing
playoffs.
it for you?
It ain't doing it for me, man. Like, talk to Eric Spoelstra about what real injuries are and get back to me. So the Nuggets are awesome, and you're mentioning, and I'm so glad you brought up this little era that we're talking about too, because I looked this up. So again, the thing that is going to be played on ESPN and all these talk shows tomorrow are the Lakers have lost 10 straight to the Nuggets. Do they have any chance of coming back in the series? Which is a worthwhile question to ask. But I think it skips over just how dominant this Nuggets team is. This is the first time LeBron has ever lost 10 games in a row to a single team. There's a reason for that. The Nuggets are that good. So I looked it up on StatHead. How many teams went with this kind of stretch over a 21 game playoff period? So the Nuggets now are 17-4 over their last 21 playoff games. Here's the company that we're talking about that the Nuggets are keeping.
Yeah.
The early 2000s Lakers, Shaq, Kobe, right? The early 2000s Spurs, the first edition of that whole thing. The 80s Celtics, the 80s Lakers, the 80s early 90s Pistons, the Michael Jordan Bulls, who did it twice, the Kevin Durant Warriors, LeBron's second Cavs team, the Big Three Heat, the Kobe and Gasol Lakers, and then the Kareem Bucks from the 70s. That I just rattled off the greatest teams in NBA history. That's essentially what that group is. And the Denver Nuggets are firmly in this group now. And that needs to be a bigger talking point than it's going to be.
And to get there, even though we love to pick holes because, it's 2024, they beat last year Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and then Jimmy Butler in the Heat. This year, they're about to dispatch LeBron again. We'll see what happens next round. It might have to be Durant and Booker again. And then in the conference finals, we'll see what that looks like. Maybe Luka Doncic, maybe Kawhi Leonard, whatever else. So they're doing it in a real way, not they got injury luck and this and that. And, you don't go through 2 years lucky. But I have actually another note there, and I do want to ask you one more question about the Lakers. I went back and looked because the other thing that happened early in this game is Jokic got 2 quick fouls. And I have said over and over the past couple of years doing this show, during this run we're talking about for Denver, that dispose of the idea that you can get him in foul trouble, because it seems like the obvious thing you would try. He's not the quickest, not the most athletic, not the highest leaper, any of that stuff. So you'd think, well, run at him, get him to smack you, make him go to the bench, and then go to work. It's not possible. Michael Malone said it in the first quarter interview that he did on TNT. I trust Jokic to handle this better than any player I've ever coached, So I was wondering, foul trouble aside, just generally, what does a bad Jokic game even look like? Right? Like, because when you see it on Twitter and stuff with Nuggets fans, a lot of the time, like, I was messaging our friend of the show, Jokic Joestar, who does great stuff on TikTok, has a Patreon, whatever. And he's a big Nuggets fan. And I was messaging him the last time the Suns played the Nuggets because Murray was out and Denver fans were apoplectic that Jokic was having a bad game. I believe he had like 25 and 10 on 50+% shooting and only 1 turnover. He might have had a triple-double, and that was a bad game to them. It's really just when he's not looking to score. That's like the thing that makes Nuggets fans want to pull their hair out, is just when he's not engaged, because he knows we don't have a shot, so I'm not even going to try. And I get that's frustrating when you watch a guy every night. But he has not had, I went back and looked, he has not had a game, a playoff loss, Wes, where he has scored fewer than 20 points since May 29th of 2021. He's only had fewer than 20 points in a playoff game one time since then, but it was a win over the Wolves. So he hasn't had fewer than 20 in a playoff loss in going on 3 years. This guy, another thing that doesn't get appreciated enough, he's about to win his 3rd MVP. He's like 15% better this time of year.
He's one of the great playoff performers of this generation and in league history. I think his playoff PER is the highest in league history. I think that was a stat that's been going around, and I haven't seen it lately, but I can't imagine that it's gone down in this series.
No.
So, this guy is just an absolute all-timer. He knows exactly how to dissect a game, and knows exactly how to handle it. To Michael Malone's point, even if the foul trouble comes, he's like, okay, I'll just try a little bit less harder on defense. I'll just let guys go by me a little bit, if that means that I get to stay on the floor. Like, he just knows what levers to pull. He knows what buttons to press. He knows everything that it takes to ultimately end up with the win, which is all he really cares about. And I think that's the coolest part about it, is he'll just do whatever it takes. And this sounds like such a platitude, do whatever it takes to win. But what I mean is he'll sacrifice whatever he has to sacrifice. He'll take whatever shot that he doesn't want to take. He'll make whatever pass that he needs to pass in order to win the game. And more often than not, it works. Like, the dude is just a machine. So, him and just the chemistry that they have. Like, the other thing that stood out to me, not in just this game, but in the series, but really in this game too, was how much more connected the Nuggets are, and how it just feels like they know exactly who they are and exactly what they want to do and exactly what they want to accomplish. Like, this is a team that has a mission statement and follows it through every stage of the process of every game, of every playoff series, of every practice, and everything like that. And with the Lakers, I don't know if they're like sometimes they're a good offensive team that can't be stopped from 3-point range, but also can't stop anybody defensively. And then for like 3 months of the season, they'll be one of the top 5 defenses in the league, but can't score. I'm like, I can't figure out this Lakers team. It's like a fake team that doesn't really exist in any sort of real way because I don't even think they know what they are. It's like D'Angelo Russell goes 0 for 6 tonight. Okay, so I guess their identity is being a defensive team, even though that wasn't really the case tonight. But then when D'Angelo Russell has it going, they just turn into some like gangbusters, like let's just push the pace, be that team, but also be like 20th in defensive rating. It just, I cannot figure them out. But with the Nuggets, I know exactly what I'm getting every single night.
Yeah, I mean, the number that was going around right after that first game, or I guess game 2, was they were scoring almost 2 points per possession in the fourth quarter. Like the times when other teams have trouble, it feels like somehow Denver is actually elevating. Russell's going to get the attention as far as another quiet night. I mean, quiet's not even enough to describe it. Obviously, 0 of 7, 0 of 6 from deep after the huge game 2 and the really bad game 1, and that's a big part of why they're so inconsistent. But I think something that flies under the radar is Austin Reeves. If you think back to last regular season, not even this past, but the prior one when he broke out, he got to the line like a madman. And that's just gone away. Like, per 36 minutes last regular season, he's at 5.2 free throws per 36. That goes down in last year's playoffs to 3.5. That's basically where it settles in this year in the regular season, 3.7. He's taken 5 free throw attempts across 3 games, Austin Reeves. And I think a large part of that is because they've now decided he's the Murray defender. You know, Gabe Vincent, in theory, sure, he can fight a little, but he's undersized. He can't really, switch on to other guys because of that, and it's not a sustainable solution.
He got torched in the finals by Murray last year. I mean, that didn't work.
Exactly.
We already knew that, yeah.
So it has to be Reeves. Maybe that's tiring him out. Tonight, obviously, the total production for Reeves was better with 22 points. A little inefficient, all things considered, and again, only those 4 free throw attempts. So I just think that they're asking too much of everybody here, and that's a big part of why they've fallen. But on the other side, on Thursday night, player who
hold on,
has not historically.
Sorry I interrupted your smooth transition there.
It's a great segue. It was really there for me, and you're taking it, but it's okay. The point better be awesome. This better be the best Lakers point I've ever seen.
Just grabbed the steering wheel and drove us into somebody's front lawn. I have a list because in today's game, it was still Jokic and Jamal Murray. Awesome Aaron Gordon game. Bunch of people hit big shots. But at the end of the day, to me, it was Jokic and Jamal Murray at the center of all of it, as it always is so far in this series. Jamal Murray went 8 for 21 tonight, but he was 7 of 15 on 2-pointers. And against the Lakers defense, that's typically not an easy thing to do with all that size that they have in the paint. And he just hit jumper after jumper in that mid-range area, got to the rim. He was awesome with 22 points and 9 assists. Jokic, I already mentioned, 24 points. 9 assists, 15 rebounds. Heck, just give him the triple-double. We all know it's basically there. Got me thinking. I want to rank my best center guard combinations in the NBA. We already know who number 1 is, but I'm going to start at number 5. Damian Lillard and Brook Lopez. Do
you have fanfare on your soundboard? Can you give us some...
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Here we go. All right, start it over. Boom, 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 boom. Number 5. Best center guard combination in the NBA, Damian Lillard and Brook Lopez. First year, they get on the list. It probably should be Damian Lillard and Giannis, if we're being honest, but it's not. It's Damian Lillard and Brook Lopez, who have instant chemistry. Good for them. Number 4, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren.
Okay.
They're awesome. They complement each other really well. That's all I got to say about that. Number 3, I can't believe they're this low, but they are. It's Steph and Draymond.
Okay.
I'm
waiting to hear. There's some names that I feel like aren't going to make it, and that's why I'm letting you go, because I have some candidates that are getting overlooked. But keep going.
I've got some honorable mentions, but I didn't mention them, so they're not very honorable. Number 2, Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And then number 1, Jokic and Murray.
Okay.
Who am I missing?
It's not a great day to do this one, but I was going to say if you count Donovan Mitchell, Mitchell and Allen had some moments when the Cavs were like watchable and good at this in
Right,
this
in
season.
January.
It was because those two were running pick and roll at a
On
really
my
high
honorable mention
level.
list. They almost made it over Lillard and Lopez, but today did not help them. Today did not help them. They just missed the cut, the bubble. I also had Halliburton
Edwards and
Miles
Towns?
Turner. I had Edwards and Gobert, but you could put Edwards
Okay.
and Towns either way.
And then really the one that I think has to be on there over the names you put, Fox and Sabonis.
Yeah, you're probably right. I probably missed them. That's okay. I forget the Sacramento
That's like
Kings.
The
Always
only
forgettable,
two
I guess.
above average players on the
Yep.
Kings. Really, consistently. You got to.
All right, knock
give them
Lillard
some
and
respect.
Lopez off. Sorry, guys. Fox and
Okay.
Sabonis. All right, there we go.
I like it. I thought you were going to go historical. I thought we were taking a trip down NBA history lane of where the Murray Joker two-man pairing fits.
I don't have the capacity for that at 1 a.m.
Yeah, it's
stick to
totally
present
all
day.
right. Totally all right. Lakers question, actually, before we fully transition. Would the DeJounte Murray trade have affected the outcome of how this has gone to you?
No.
It would have been D'Lo, some young guys, and some picks. So really only Russell going out as far as this rotation goes and Murray coming in, no?
I don't think it would have affected how they play against Denver. The thing that the Lakers need to figure out against the Nuggets going forward is how they can just get up more threes than them. The Nuggets do a great job of running guys off the three-point line. It's part of their formula. It has been, whether they're playing the Lakers or any of the other 28 teams in the NBA. But they got to figure out how to get threes up, but it doesn't help when D'Lo goes over 6. But DeJounte Murray's not exactly like a prolific three-point shooter either. He likes to settle right into that mid-range area too, and they have enough of that.
Feels like the Lakers could use a guy that actually now plays for the Nuggets who they traded for Russell Westbrook, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That would be a pretty nice piece. All right. My other segue is gone. I was gonna say pretty nice piece, Joel Embiid. We'll just jump to Sixers Knicks here, but it is about as different of a game as you could ask for. I mean, you're talking about a Nuggets team that does this all the time. Embiid absolutely does not, and he had the best playoff game of his life, Wes. And I can't help but call this one a Twilight Zone 50 piece. Is really what it feels like we were in here, because the guy can't blink with one of his eyes. Depending on the day, he either is hobbled or absolutely fine on this left knee that's been surgically repaired from the meniscus tear. And they fumble on the road, golden opportunities, especially in game 2 to win. Come back home, look like the vastly superior team, in large part because Embiid is so great. I don't know what to make of this series because of how lopsided and topsy-turvy it's been, depending on the moment or the stretch you're talking about, or which player. Brunson steps up tonight, and Embiid obviously does. Maxey has a very, very quiet first half. Did OG Anunoby solve him? No, never mind. They have a solution for that. Maxey's going off again, too. Where are we after 3 games with this series? Is it just going 7 and it's going to go down to the final shot?
I think so. You mentioned a Twilight Zone game. It strikes me more of a Black Mirror game where things keep going wrong and just worse and worse. And you're like, okay, this guy's knee is hurt and now he can't blink out of one eye and half of his face doesn't work. Like what's going to be next for Joel Embiid? Oh, I guess he's just going to score 50 points. It doesn't make any sense. And you end up leaving the episode like, what just happened exactly? So it's both.
You learn about Bell's palsy.
But,
you learn a little bit about knee surgery.
I didn't think I was going to be on like clinical websites tonight, but there I was learning about Bell's palsy or whoever it is. I think the
Ball's palsy was Mitchell Robinson in the first half. That was getting kicked in the balls. That was what you were thinking of there.
More Ball's palsy. No, I think we're probably going 6 or 7 games in this series based on, I know obviously the Knicks had a 2-0 lead going into this thing, but those first 2 games are really close. And the difference in the first 2 games is that the Knicks had a second guy. It was obviously Jalen Brunson doing his thing, but it was, Dante DiVincenzo going off or Josh Hart going off. And that's basically been the formula for the Knicks since Julius Randle went down, is one of this like, smorgasbord of role players. Someone was going to step up and act like a main course, and every single night it just seemed like for the Knicks somebody was stepping up, whether it was those 2 guys or OG Anunoby when he's been healthy or whoever it might be, and they just didn't get that tonight. And the 76ers did. They got Joel Embiid and they got Tyrese Maxey. They had the best duo in this game, and they won. And the Knicks couldn't keep up. And so I thought that was really the difference. And I know Knicks fans are going to want, and Tom Thibodeau in particular is going to take issue with the difference in free throw shooting, which there was certainly a difference in this game. 30-something free throws for the Sixers, 21 of them for Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid got to the line more than the entire Knicks team combined, who got to the line 19 times. Jalen Brunson accounting for 12 of those. So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be issues with the officiating, and then we obviously have the flagrant that might have been able to be a flagrant 2, and maybe Joel Embiid's not even able to finish this game, but he does, and he has 50 points, and that's sort of my big takeaway from this one, Brendon, is if this is the Joel Embiid that the Sixers are going to get going forward, because he looked better in this game too, just beyond the 50 points. Like, he was moving better. Yeah. Defensively, he was competing a lot better. Like, this was the best he's looked for most of the game. Just don't look at his face. Like, everything else was great. But if this is the Embiid that they are getting, this is the Embiid that makes the 76ers contenders. And I don't even think that that's hyperbole. Like,
this is the dude who was about to win MVP in January.
Exactly. Yeah. This is a team that should not be the 7th seed, but are because the reigning MVP got hurt for as long as he got hurt. And so they went into New York, almost stole a win there, weren't able to pull it off, bounced back. I thought they were really resilient to come back to Game 3, even at home in Philly, and get this win. And I think we have a series. I really do.
Yeah, so first possession, they post Embiid up. I believe he spun baseline, scored on Hartenstein. Like, from that moment, it was like he just literally didn't do that in either of the first 2 games. As basic of a Joel Embiid play that we've seen 100 times as that was, it told you a lot.
And it was a quick move, too, because he saw OG Anunoby come over for the help, and as soon as he saw Anunoby lunge, he said, okay, I'm spinning away from Anunoby, I'm going baseline, I'm going to score. It was awesome. I saw the same thing you did.
He's boxing out. Only 8 rebounds, which is actually a lower number than he's had in some of these other games. And helping at the rim, actually stepping up to contain drives as that last line of defense. All these little things that physically he just was bailing out of. I talked about it with Chris after the first game when Lisa Salters said on the ESPN broadcast, Wes, that the majority, as far as Nick Nurse was concerned, of Embiid's balancing act here was trusting the leg, more so than lingering pain or inflammation or whatever. Now, Game 2, he's limping up and down the court the whole damn game, so I don't really know if I fully buy that, and there was one moment where he seemed to kind of tweak it today and had a couple labored possessions, but I do think that's at least a significant part of what's going on, is that he physically needs to get comfortable pushing himself, getting contact, embracing those moments, and then not getting hurt, and maybe it just took a couple of games for that to happen, but I don't know if we'll expect this, just given 50 points is an outlier, but what that did is it opened things up for Tyrese Maxey, and that 2-man game in the second half was a big part of what allowed Maxey to get going. You know, they talked post-game, and people were putting a lot of clips up online of them using Lowry as a screener, forcing OG Anunoby to switch off of Maxey. Certainly helps to score on a player other than the best defender on the other team, and Maxey had his pull-up 3 going. You know, Embiid's making 3s, so that's opening up the floor. It just really was a domino effect from there with Embiid setting that tone of, I can do this, I'm able to take on a huge load, and that's how you get to 125 and a win.
And Embiid being our participant, you mentioned all the defensive stuff. Great point. Notice the same thing. Offensively, he's moving around, he's setting screens. These are not things that he was doing in New York because he wasn't capable of doing it. He is getting more comfortable. And by the way, it would be more surprising if he wasn't getting more comfortable, right? Like, this is just what happens. You have more time on the knee, you tend to get comfortable. And the longer this playoff run for the Sixers goes, the more comfortable he's probably going to get, as long as he doesn't tweak it and try to throw alley-oops off the backboard to himself for no reason. So if he just plays smart and plays within himself, there's enough there, even though we already know he's never going to be at 100%. But if he's, like, tonight was like an 80% Joel Embiid night, and that's going to be good enough for the Sixers to make it a long run. He scored 50,
but I agree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he went off in that third quarter, right? He scores 50 points, and that was like an 80%. He went 4 for 4 from three-point range in the third quarter, Brendon, and some of that was just like stupid standstill at the top of the arc, No
Trying to draw
movement,
fouls.
zero rhythm. Just guy just right at his belly and just shooting over him. And I obviously knew Joel Embiid had touch just based on all the things about Joel Embiid that we already know. But like that was just such a display, such a flex of I don't even really have to get any lift or any sort of rhythm into this jumper, and I'm just going to make it from 29 feet out, and there's nothing you could do about it. It was wild to see him do that. He ends up having, what, 5 3-pointers in this game total? Was it 5 or 6? 5? So,
yep, 5 of 7.
5 of 7. So that's 15 points from beyond the arc, plus 19 points at the free throw line.
Now, to be fair, some of those free throws fouling late. You know, he was at like 44 points or something during the competitive part of the game. But
that's fair.
Yes.
But that just goes to show, like, this is not even a guy who needed to do it down low the way that a usual 7-footer or even Joel Embiid sometimes does. Like, it wasn't really the free throw line jumper over and over for him, even though he had a couple of those tonight. It wasn't like spamming that button over and over the way that it usually is. So the guy's just got it going, man. And I do have one more list for you if you're interested.
I am interested. I also just want to mention that Nick Nurse may or may not be some sort of wizard or conjurer of some kind. Buddy Hield basically benched in this game. Mm-hmm. Sixers just get a nice little 11-3 from Cam Payne out of absolutely nowhere. Like, yeah, I guess that's just home court advantage in the NBA playoffs, is you get a performance like that from a guy who was getting DNPs, but that certainly helped.
Yeah, he mentioned after the game that Cam Payne just, I guess, had the hot hand, so he just kept riding him and played him 15 minutes. But I guess the idea was to try some other guys. But then, Cam Payne had it going. So good for Cam Payne, man. You get one playoff game like that from Cam Payne every series. So the Sixers got it, and they got the win for it. I mentioned that Joel Embiid made the 5 3-pointers, and that got me thinking. Centers in NBA history to make at least 5 3-pointers in a playoff game, okay, like all time. So there's 9 of them. I'm going to give you 5. And I want to see if you can get the other 4. Okay? So obviously one of them is Joel Embiid. Channing Frye, our podcast colleague. I think they still have a podcast. I don't know. Myers Leonard.
They do, yes. Okay.
Karl Anthony Towns. Mm-hmm. And the most surprising one on this list, and it's why I'm giving it to you for free, Bill Laimbeer in 1990.
Okay.
He did it. He made like 6 3-pointers in a game for the Pistons. They made 8 as a team the entire game. I think they took like 10. So 1990s basketball. Shout out to Bill Laimbeer. Can you give me the other 4?
I know I can give you 1. I always think it's funny, though, with those 3-point specialist players from that era, because you'll see it a lot. Those names come up now when guys are breaking their records, but they put the specialist in 3-point specialist back then. It was like, that is your job. And they were doing volume that guys now are like finally getting back around to. Like you'll see like in Phoenix, Quentin Richardson still has the single season 3-point record from the 7 seconds or less days. Not quite the Bill Laimbeer days, but it's like that guy was out there to shoot. And I guess it was the same with Bill Laimbeer, who, when he was a coach in the WNBA, his teams never took threes. So I guess he bailed on that. Okay, I have one for you. Brook Lopez.
Yep.
Okay. Kevin Love probably doesn't count.
He's not on the list.
Okay. Chris Bosh.
No, surprisingly not on the list.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I'm already getting. I'm getting. Jokic has not done this.
Jokic has done it.
Okay. So I got 3. 2.
You got 2 more.
Porzingis, does he count?
Not on the list.
Wow.
Oh wait, you don't get an air horn. Sorry.
I don't get an air horn. Okay, I'm out of guesses. I'm only getting
Nikola.
modern guys. Nikola Vucevic?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one guy, he plays for the number 1 seed, same team as Kristaps Porzingis, different center.
Al Horford.
Al Horford. He's done it. He's actually done it a couple of times.
Man.
9 times.
Some of the names that weren't on there was Chris Bosh.
No Chris Bosh. I was very surprised to see that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Couple Knicks things before we jump to Magic Cavs. They did run more set plays for Anunoby in this game. They were trying to post Maxey up with him. They ran a couple pick and rolls. And, like, we have to remember, they're sort of still integrating OG. Like, they got him. Mm-hmm. He played really well, but he was really kind of just a 3-and-D hustle dude. Then he gets hurt. Came back right at the end of the regular season. Like, it's a balancing act. It's the playoffs. You can't exactly like roll out a new playbook, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see that continue over the course of the game, over the course of the series. I feel like Brunson, this game could be a turning point for him as well. Like, I think this is going to be closer to what he is the rest of the series. He just seems to have a little bit of a rhythm. One thing that could change that, I think, is if Embiid, if the level of defensive intensity keeps rising, Brunson's going to have to kind of readjust to that. But I just think Oubre's a body out there. He's athletic. We know he can stay attached and everything. I think Brunson's solving him. I know Oubre had a big offensive game. I think he's going to do that whether he starts or comes off the bench. I still think the Sixers probably eventually should start Nick Batum in this series. What do you think?
I think that's fine. I'm kind of an Oubre guy, and I like the effort that he's shown.
You covered him, right? You buddies?
I covered him for 1 year in the weird Zoom year, so we don't. He only knows me by voice, I guess. But no, I think you're right though about Jalen Brunson. I think they set some higher screens and they really forced Philadelphia centers to come up to the level, and they didn't. Right? Whether it was Joel Embiid or Paul Reed or whoever, like Brunson was able to kind of get up into those pull-up threes that have morphed his game and taken it to another level this year. The other thing that Tom Thibodeau did, and I think he should get some credit for this, is designing some set plays with Jalen Brunson doing stuff off ball, doing work early in the shot clock to just free himself, going like those Iverson cuts or coming across pin downs or staggered screens or whatever it was. Like they had like 2 or 3 different kinds of basic actions that they kept going to in this game to just get Jalen Brunson a feet or 2 of space by the time he catches the ball, just to kind of create some breathing room between him and his defender. And I think we'll probably see a little bit more of that going forward.
He likes those sets where he comes starting in the corner toward the middle. Very Isaiah Thomas Celtics era, stuff where it's like, this guy's small. How can we get him into some breathing room? Should they play Alec Burks over Bojan Bogdanovic to kind of milk the offense a little bit? It's small stuff, but we're talking about, hey, Cam Payne scored 13. Could that make a difference? Because Burks has just been shelved here.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Bojan Bogdanovic. I thought this guy was supposed to be like the big savior for the Lakers last year, and you fast forward a year later, he gets traded to the Knicks. Everybody's like, oh my God, and he hasn't done squat since he got to New York. So yeah, I don't see a reason why not. Play Alec Burks.
Yeah, I think it could
They need
help.
that second guy.
It's a smaller
right? This is
player.
The whole thing. The whole formula is if DiVincenzo and Hart or Anunoby, if they're not getting it going, you got to experiment a little bit on that bench. But we know that Tibbs likes to stick to his guys. So
yeah. On that note, just kind of physical, gross game here, and I have like 8 little points in time throughout this, especially first half, where guys were hurt or fouls happened. There was the Embiid, Mitchell Robinson dust up under the basket where it ends up with a flagrant for Embiid. But point is, Robinson is out, sprained the same ankle that he sprained in the regular season. He's been injury prone dating back to high school. The guy can't stay on the court. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses multiple games. If not, we'll see. But that's the beauty of the Knicks here. They have Precious Achiuwa, and he stepped right up, got a stop against Embiid in the post. So that strategy, it keeps being buried the past few episodes we've done in the postseason, but at some point, I think it's worth exploring, like this approach the Knicks have had to signing a bunch of centers at middling salaries that all do different things and kind of adding them up to one kind of, Voltron center guy. It works, and tonight obviously showed that. They'll have to have that the rest of the way. I have a list for you, Wes.
Ooh, all right.
This is a list that's named after Josh Hart, but I think he's actually too good to qualify for it. So it is the Josh Hart honorary. He'll be an honorable mention on it. The players who are better in the playoffs than the regular season.
Okay.
Maybe he's not too good to be on it, but he kind of does the same thing. He's the same guy, so I didn't put him on. I'll go 5-1. Number 5, Ty Lue. Okay. Not a player at all, but he kicks us off. They win like 45 games every year, and then somehow he looks like a genius come postseason time. I know Eric Spoelstra is still the number one king in your heart, but Lue is certainly right there with him. Won that game 1 pretty much just with the game plan alone, I thought. Number 4, Caleb Martin.
Yeah, has to be on there, especially if he's playing Boston.
Caleb Martin at the TD Garden is an all-star and should have the Larry Bird Conference Finals MVP trophy hanging up somewhere from last year.
Should the Celtics just trade for Caleb Martin since they'll get 41 games of him at TD Garden? Wouldn't you just throw like a couple of first-round picks Miami's way? Just saying, Brad Stevens, it's just an idea.
Only play him in home games. Just,
right.
Put Hauser out there for the road games.
Yep.
All right, number 3, we're getting into actual star-level players. Pascal Siakam.
Apparently.
Feels like the guy can be very hit or miss in the regular season, likes to kind of do his thing, lay out in the mid-range, ISO ball. It's not always the most efficient thing to be doing, but in the playoffs, it's kind of what you need. Feels like, at the very least, what he does becomes a hell of a lot more valuable.
Yeah, he's been an absolute predator in that Milwaukee series. It's like, Brook Lopez, you're on me? Cool, I'm going to blow by you. Oh, it's Bobby Portis? I know you're not paying attention to anything that's happening off ball. I'll just cut right behind you. He's been awesome, yeah.
It's peak I know my game.
Yeah.
Energy, where it's like, I know what I can't do, most importantly, and I know what to go to depending on who's guarding me. I'm a vet, and that's why they got him. All right, number 2, Jamal Murray.
Yep. Great pick.
The list should be named after him. Josh Hart just stole it because it was a good transition. Number 1, Anthony Edwards. I don't think we realize that Anthony Edwards is 22 years old. And I know, you follow NBA Central on Twitter and places like that, and you'll get these random stats where it's like, he's the only guy since Julius Erving to do this thing you didn't know he did. And those kind of actually undervalue it. Point is, the guy's averaged close to 30 a game on elite efficiency with some assists and very few turnovers I think this is his 3rd playoff series now, and some monster play-in performances all before he turns 23. It is out of this world.
It's his composure that really is doing it for me in terms of his floor game, making the simple pass, making the simple read, knowing how to reset a possession to get to his shot, knowing exactly how he wanted to attack a Phoenix Suns defense, which, again, is not exactly, one of the best defenses in the NBA, but there's future Hall of Famers across from him, and he's figuring it out. And it reminds me a little bit of like young Dwayne Wade. But the difference between young Dwayne Wade and 22-year-old Anthony Edwards is D Wade went to college for multiple years at Marquette and went through March Madness series and brackets and things like that. Like, that dude had experience in big games by the time he got to the NBA. Anthony Edwards had none of that, dude. He played a few months at Georgia and then went to the NBA in a weird COVID year, in a weird COVID draft, and ended up just showing up in Minnesota on a bad team, and then ends up getting in these playoffs the last couple of years and just being awesome. That dude is phenomenal. So I'm glad he's number 1. How come Jimmy Butler's not on the list? Is it just because he's hurt?
I'm going to reset us here because I'm blurred out, and then I will bring us back for the YouTube audience. Back and slightly less blurred. Yeah, Jimmy Butler should be on this list. He's not active right now in the playoffs, so I left him off. But nobody should have... Josh Hart shouldn't have been how I did this. That's just disrespectful to some of the people that I ended up ultimately putting on here. But it's cool. It's like we listened to Draymond Green with the 82 game player thing, but I think there's like this other breed where it's like
a 16
they're a 16 game player and like almost not an 82 game player, like actively not that and only the other thing. But okay, let's get to the first game of Thursday night, Wes, which resulted in another home win, as we've seen countless times throughout these playoffs already. Cleveland, Orlando. And what we want to focus on is just the adjustments we're seeing from the Magic side of things and how much I think meat was on the bone there in those Cleveland games that we're now seeing to come to fruition, starting with the lineup change. Wendell Carter Jr. comes in here, starts over Jonathan Isaac, who had been the center for the last couple regular season games into the playoffs. And I know it's counterintuitive to everything you would think because Isaac can shoot it a little better, Wes, and like the defensive intensity, the switchability, all those things are there. It makes theoretical sense, but to me, watching this team play again, and we adopted this team during the regular season and talked about them quite a bit, they just know how to play with that 5-man group with Wendell Carter in there better than they do with Isaac. And sometimes that's what you just need in the postseason, is just to kind of play your game and hope that works. And obviously it did in game 3.
Yeah, this was an instance of Jamal Mosley maybe outsmarting himself in those first 2 games, going away from what got them there and going with Jonathan Isaac. Because you're right, it does make intuitive sense, but this is sort of this is why you can't have nice things type of situation for Mosley and the Magic. It's okay, Jonathan Isaac is awesome for 15 to 20 minutes off the bench as a floor spacing big and dynamo defender who could do everything you want and just disrupt a game halfway through, right? Just midstream, just change the tide of that game. And when you start him, you kind of take that away and you force him to be something different, something new, and that's more of a tone setter as opposed to a kind of a change of pace.
Yeah.
And that's a very different thing. And I just thought like Mosley outsmarted himself there, and I'm glad that they went back to this the original starting lineup. It was very obvious that was going to be the change that he made after going down 0-2 in Cleveland, coming back to Orlando. The Magic were out-rebounded in every game. Jarrett Allen got off in those first 2 games, and they just needed more size. They needed more physicality. They needed more chemistry. They just needed more all of it, and they needed Jonathan Isaac back on the bench. They were minus 17. They got outscored by 17 total points in the first 2 games with that lineup with Jonathan Isaac at center. They outscored Cleveland tonight by 16 points with Wendell Carter in at that spot. It's just a better lineup. It's what got them to the playoffs. Just play your game. And I don't know what they're trying to do anyway. You're the Orlando Magic. Just go. Like, what's the point of doing that lineup change? What do you really?
You're not going to become an offensive team with one change. Your roster is what your roster is. If Jonathan Isaac is your offensive solution, things are probably in a weird spot.
Exactly. So this is why I'm also sort of against making those changes game 1. If you have an identity and you feel good about it, go into game 1. Even if you lose game 1, it gives you a baseline. It gives you a baseline of how much do we really need to change. And for a team with absolutely zero playoff experience, I thought it was silly that they even tried doing that. And so I'm glad they went back to it. Now you can get that baseline. And then Ben Caro went off in this game. He found himself. You had Jalen Suggs guarding Donovan Mitchell. You just stop getting weird. Just do your thing. The Cavs, they have enough weird stuff happening on their own end. So I thought this was a much more regular, normal, just be yourself Magic basketball game. Good for them.
Yeah, and look, I think there's something to be said, and I don't mean this with any ounce of disrespect. That's just true of some players. I wrote a whole article about how non-shooters stay on the floor for SB Nation this year. There's something to be said for guys who know they're not shooters. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Isaac, in theory, has kind of upped his comfort with that shot at least from the corner this season for that Magic team, but Cleveland wasn't guarding it. And then he doesn't know how to be a guy who's not being guarded from 3 and how to counter that. Whereas Wendell Carter, it's what he's been doing since he was at Duke. He's a dribble, go right into a dribble handoff, a lot of Bam Adebayo type of things that Wendell Carter does as an off-ball player, despite guys playing off of him and him not being a threat to shoot. You mentioned, though, Paolo, and to me, it's not so much of an adjustment as just an uptick here. Franz Wagner kind of found himself. 6 points early, catch and shoot 3, just got comfortable. Defense had to guard him. That opens up some driving lanes. Paolo got open shots, which was a sight for sore eyes for him, I'm sure, given how ugly he was having to play in those first couple games. 9 turnovers in game 1 and everything. Suggs was getting some open driving lanes as a cutter. Franz has been near the top of the league in drives per game this playoffs before game 3, despite not being able to even hit, the rim on some of these shots. So if he can even do what he did in this one, which I don't have the numbers in front of me, he was 16 points, 8 assists, 6 of 12 from the field. Not a huge, double-double or anything like that, but effective, needing to be guarded. That's going to go a long way for a team that needs all the points it can get. So I think the Magic are well on their way here. On the Cleveland side, Wes, Donovan Mitchell, to me, it's probably a little unfair to point a finger at him, given that for the most part, he's been the only guy able to consistently create offense for this Cavs team, but it wasn't good enough tonight. It was not efficient. It was not high volume in any way, shape, or form. And just in terms of his offensive approach, I found myself thinking for a lot of the ways that we've criticized this one player in Mitchell's conference, Donovan Mitchell is kind of a smaller Jason Tatum in terms of the way that he looks at this stuff, except Tatum's actually taken a leap to probably not being in that camp anymore. We saw Tatum against Miami. I thought he was actually pretty solid in terms of getting downhill and kind of trying to will his team into some better, more efficient looks. Mitchell just sort of settles for what the defense is giving. They could be down 10 in a big moment. He'll take a pull-up three just because that's kind of the easier option or what he feels most comfortable doing, or I don't know. And they can't have that version of Mitchell right now if they're going to be able to score against a really good defense when nobody else has consistently stepped up all year as a scorer for this team, frankly.
Yeah, Chris Manning sent us this in our text message thread here, but the Cavs scoring in the last 6 quarters, 22 points, 16 points, 21, 24, 16, and 22. This team can't score, and that should not be the case when you have Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Max Strus. Like, you have different options. Like, that shouldn't be the case here, with all due respect to the Magic and their defense. And most of that probably is the Magic's defense and Cleveland just not knowing how to attack it. And especially tonight, we saw the same thing that gave the Cavs problems against the Knicks in the first round last year. Big bodies and physicality. And they just don't know how to attack that prototype of a team. And the Magic, they're not as good as the Knicks, but they're very much made from the same sort of cloth. They're cut from that same cloth. Physicality, they're going to get up into your airspace. They're going to challenge you to even move. And the Cavs just don't have whatever it takes to muscle through that and get to that next level of their offense. Like you said, it's, all right, Jared Allen, come up, set a screen for Donovan Mitchell. He's going to come off that screen. If that look isn't there, I'm just going to pull up for this shot anyway. I don't care. It's going to be a contested jumper. Maybe I'll try to blow by you and draw a foul. And then you're not really getting into those other layers of your offense because I don't really know that they exist. I don't know that I've seen it, right? Outside of a drive and kick to Strus or Jordan Niang in the corner. Like, that's it. And so for a team that was up 2-0 going into this game, I don't know that I've ever seen worse vibes for a team with a 2-game lead in a series than the Cavaliers tonight. Break them up. Like, there's no reason for them to exist together in this way. They don't want to be there. Nobody wants to see them together. Just, I don't mean to be like, hey, blow it up, guy, but blow it up. Nobody wants to see this team anymore.
A lot of it to me too, and it almost feels like beating a dead horse, but I think it's worth pointing out the specific ways that it's a problem, which is just that too big arrangement for them. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe a more creative team with players who can kind of navigate those difficult situations and cramped quarters and intense defense a little better, it wouldn't be such a problem. But you mentioned some of what they ran into last year, and I think I cannot for the life of me understand why they continue to run offense where it's one of the guards up top running a pick and roll with Mobley and Allen camped in the dunker spot as a non-threat and just inviting additional help defense at the rim. They do it over and over. Allen is nowhere near enough of a force down there to really make it worth it. Mobley doesn't really have much of a short roll passing game yet. He doesn't really have a floater, or he can't kind of just turn his body and turn that into a post up. There's no versatility to it. It is literally ramming your head into a wall. Like, almost literally, if the wall is the center on the other team, Mobley's basically doing that. And they do it over and over, and they did it in this game. And it kind of goes back to the Suggs on Mitchell stuff, for just how the Magic were defending Mitchell in this game. A lot of the time, the Magic didn't even care enough to let it get to that point where somebody's at the basket and the help is there. They were just switching. I thought Paolo held up really well in those moments. And that just neutralized everything because there's not a lot going on in the half court when the Cavs are running offense. So if you're able to just kind of switch and squelch it out, it's basically over. So this feels like the Magic have this series right in their hands if they can score even 100 points a game.
That's the thing. I don't trust either of these teams, even a little bit, to score consistently enough to win a playoff series. One of them's going to win this series, and it's going to be probably more because the other team lost the series. than anything else. I do have a fix though for the Cleveland Cavaliers. The more that we're talking through this, I can fix the whole thing right now.
Okay.
You ready?
All right.
Okay. They'll never do this because NBA teams don't operate this way, but they should literally just have 2 units and just do it that way. It looks better when it's Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen together with role players, without Darius Garland, without Evan Mobley on the court, and then boom, when they come off, you shuttle in the second unit. You just do 2 units. We won't even call it second unit and first unit. We'll just call it the red team and the white, or the scarlet team, whatever they are, scarlet and the white team,
wine.
Or whatever it is.
I think it's wine.
Okay, wine. Yeah, we'll do red wine and white wine. Those will be the 2 different teams.
There you go.
The red wine team and the white wine team. And
hockey. Go hockey with it.
Just go complete hockey with it. You got your 2 units. They could flip a coin. It doesn't matter which one starts. Literally just change it every other night so that nobody gets butthurt about it. And just go Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen with shooters, and then Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and whatever shooters they want, and just run those 2 units. And if there was ever time to do it, it would be in the playoffs. I don't know why NBA teams don't. Well, I do know why. It's because there's too many egos involved. But if there was ever a team to do it, this would be the team to do it.
It's definitely, you're making a joke, but it's also like
I'm
very
not,
much. I know you're not. You're being facetious. You're being facetious because it's unrealistic.
I'm just asking questions.
That is basically what the Cavs front office is going to be thinking about this offseason. Which combination of these players actually makes sense together, likes playing together, and has an upside to get better? Because they have 4 different versions of their team. None of them have been great outside of, I guess, the Mitchell Allen thing, but that's probably the lowest ceiling of all the versions of it. It's just kind of the one that can eat innings in the regular season and be pretty effective. I doubt that's going to be the 2 guys they keep if they're really trying to blow this thing up. What coach makes sense for this? So obviously plenty to get to, but
2 different coaches.
The Magic.
One coaches the wine, the red wine, and the one coaches the
Luke
white
Walton's
wine team.
there.
Yeah, boom.
He has some experience. He seems like the perfect white wine head coach.
Chardonnay guy.
That wasn't a race thing, but
a little bit.
Okay. Very quickly to wrap up, Wes. In the other series here, I have a little game called What Matters More that I'm not sure you've played with us. It's very simple. The rules are pick which thing matters the most of the list.
I'm following you.
I have 2 injuries and an outlier box score to throw at you. So first, the outlier box score situation. Porzingis and Holiday combining to go 5 of 22 from the field in game 2 against the Miami Heat. Mm-hmm. Daniel Gafford's injury for the Mavs. Mm-hmm. And Grayson Allen's injury for the Suns. Which of those 3 things, as we look forward, matters the most to how those series will unfold?
Probably the Grayson Allen injury, only because I'm assuming the way that the rules of this game works, and it was pretty confusing the way you explained it, but is that I just don't see Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis shooting that poorly again. So I don't think it matters. It matters in the sense that they lost game 2, but I don't know how much it matters going forward. And
exactly. You're
Daniel
getting
Gafford injury sucks. It doesn't matter so much for this series. It could matter if they play the Nuggets later, but I don't know the severity of the injury. Do we know how long he's going to be out? We don't really have any clarification on that. So they're not going to need him necessarily against the Clippers because their best lineups have been with Maxi Kleber at the 5 anyway and going small, and Lively's actually been playing pretty well for them. So I think that they'll be able to survive that one. But without Grayson Allen, it kind of gets rid of the one guy who really does the things that the Suns need a guy to do. I know they thought Royce O'Neal would kind of do that stuff. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Grayson Allen pretty much always brings that, I'm going to trip you energy, and they need that. And without him, they obviously don't have it. So I'm going to go with Grayson Allen.
Back spasms for Gafford, questionable for game 3 on Friday. So yeah, that Gafford trying to guard Jokic, the image you put in my head after Zubac's easily scoring on him in game 1 is a little worrying regardless of his health, but
right.
I think Allen is probably the right answer there. I agree the Holiday and I agree the Porzingis part of that was an outlier. Holiday tends to
definitely fair.
Go outside of his own comfort zone a little more than he should in these playoff situations, so maybe that could continue, but I don't think you're going to get away with leaving Porzingis so open, guarding him with smaller players. Again, if you're Miami, especially with Boston kind of being ready for it in a way they weren't. Allen hasn't been able to be a huge producer for the Suns so far. But if you look at the offensive rating with him on versus off, even in the playoffs, even with him not actually producing much, it's still a massive gulf. So from that, point of view, they certainly just need the spacing he provides. Right. And they don't really have anybody else to do that. So I think that's the right answer. All right, that'll wrap us up. Don't forget to hit subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're finding us on, including YouTube. We're also on social media everywhere that you might be. We are probably there as well. X, Instagram, TikTok, and beyond. All right, back Monday with another episode of the Just Basketball. Enjoy the hoops in the meantime, and we'll catch you next week.